Okay, here we go. We are live. Welcome to another Predictable Revenue Live, where you get free coaching from top B2B sales development experts. Our mission as a company is to educate the world on how to grow a business by creating repeatable, scalable, and predictable revenue through sales development. My name is Christina Esposto. I'm excited. This is my first Predictable Live, so bear with me. We're going to fumble through this together. I'm a sales and strategy coach here at Predictable Revenue, and I will be your host today. I'm chatting live with Sebastian Sanders, a former SDR and current head of SDR at Bloobirds. Sebastian is account executive and SDR manager at Bloobirds, focusing on high growth B2B SaaS companies while working globally. Seb focused mostly on his native United Kingdom and Europe in general. He's also contributed his expertise to various startups looking to grow their outbound teams. So welcome, Sebastian.
Thank you very much, Christina. It's lovely to be here. It's my second Predictable Women. I think I did one with Sarah back in the day.
Right.
But yeah, pleased to be back. Pleased to be invited back to do this. So yeah.
Excellent. That's wonderful. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself so the listeners know why they should take your advice on anything?
I mean, you've kind of said it a little bit there. So yeah, of course, I'm heading the SDR team. I'm head of the SDR team here at Bloobirds, based in Barcelona. We operate all over the world, actually. But before I was head of SDRs, I do sales, but I think it's important for me to mention that I've been there and done that as an SDR. So I was an SDR for a long time here at Bloobirds. I actually went through the pandemic and everything as an SDR. So we've been through the tough side of things, and hopefully we're coming out of it on the other side of things now. But yeah, so I did a lot. I did over a year of SDR work there as well. So it's been a bumpy ride, but it's been a great ride. I've learned quite a lot, and I'm happy now to be able to kind of share that experience both with my team and also with everyone who's tuning into this kind of thing. So yeah, that's why you should listen to me. Whether you take that advice or not, it's up to you guys, of course.
No, it's important to have been in the trenches. I mean, I don't think there's a harder job in the sales organization than an SDR.
But also very rewarding. I mean, important to stick that. I always mention, it's a hard job, but you've got to do it. Everyone's got to do it, I think.
I couldn't agree more. Perfect. So just a little housekeeping before we get started. For all the listeners out there, if you have any questions or comments about sales sequences, leave them in the chat so we can answer them live. Hopefully we can answer them live for you. Okay, so let's dive right in. So having a great development sales sequence is just as important as having the right service or product, right? So creating top sales email sequences requires a lot more work than just writing a few little punchy pitches, as they will become the foundation of your outreach efforts. So for long-term success, your SDRs and AEs need to be fully committed to this process, yes? So having the freedom to bring up new ideas and the creation and adoption of new content, right? So Sebastian, let's first get into some of the definitions. So we talk about sequences, we talk about cadences, so let's define, make sure that we're clear on what these things are.
Yeah, for me, I think I think cadence might be, and again, I'm not 100% sure this cadence might be a bit more of a European thing. In any case, more or less for me, they're very similar things. A sequence or a cadence for me is essentially the minimum number of attempts we make to try and have a meaningful conversation with the prospect, whether that be via email, via LinkedIn, via phone calls, or via any other channels out there. There's plenty of them. That for me is what it consists of. No, and if, for example, I don't know, like a 2-week cadence would be used, or a 2-week sequence is using different channels in order to have a conversation. Because at the end of the day, any goal of any SDR, or the first goal of any SDR, is to have a conversation. It also, unfortunately, is probably one of the more difficult challenges that SDRs face. Is actually getting someone to listen to you for more than 10 seconds on the phone, or for someone to actually open your email. And so for me, yeah, that's where a sequence or a cadence kind of falls in my definition is essentially that the minimum number of attempts one makes in order to have that meaningful conversation, which allows you then to have a pitch and then hopefully close a meeting. No?
Yeah, that's it exactly. So what have you found? Do you think there's a magic number of, how many touches you need to have to get in touch with someone?
Yeah, I mean, this is always difficult. This always depends on the target markets you're dealing with and with the individuals, the type of people you're speaking with and things like this. I think that there's a lot of variation here. And I would always recommend, some A/B testing and things like this in order to kind of figure out what the best cadence or sequence is that suits your target market. What I will say is the cadence that we kind of base a lot of our cadences on here at Bloobirds is a quite intense 2-week cadence, which involves something like 10 to 11 touch points or days of touch points. No, in fact, okay, and I would say that's quite intense. Now we have a lot of calls in there. We probably have in the 2 weeks, we have maybe 6 days of calling or 6 like call points, I guess you could call them, right. And 4 emails in there as well, at least. Obviously, they're spread out across those days, and you can be quite flexible with that. But I would say that's a good starting point. No, of course, I would say that depends on who you're dealing with. In my experience, dealing with companies which are much larger, say, 500 plus employees, you probably want a slightly longer cadence because you're going to probably be referred by endless leads to different other people to speak to, and you end up with a slightly longer cadence because you're probably going to end up speaking to slightly more people, or again, you're going to have more attempts because it's slightly more corporate, and we know how corporate things, there's a few more blockages on the road instead of trying to speak to the CEO of a 30-person company, which tends to be a much easier thing to do in that sense. So yeah, I would say, I don't know, that's my kind of base point for a cadence, is something like 2 weeks with quite a few touch points in there. Obviously a couple of days break. You do not want to be peppering your prospects with endless phone calls and emails. No, because that starts to annoy people. No, I don't know. That's where I would come from. I would say that's at least where I'd start when it comes to building out a cadence.
So question for you, you talked about the size of the company. So, like 500-person company. How about revenue? So let's say it's a smaller company, but they have huge amounts of revenue, as we see in a lot of SaaS companies or tech companies. Would that be the same, do you think? Or
personally, I'm sure you guys have a way of going about this predictable revenue. I myself will base it essentially on the ease that I have in terms of getting in touch with that person. And I do feel like a 30-person company, whether they're making $1 million ARR or they're making 10,000 ARR, they're still a 30-person company, and I can probably get in touch with the relevant decision maker in the same amount of steps, whether they're making loads of money or not very much money. So I do find, of course, I'm not saying that it doesn't matter. Absolutely research that and use that as part of your prospecting, because that's obviously really important. For me, one of the biggest pieces of advice I would give to any SDR out there is know that person's company better than they know their own company. So definitely take it into account when it comes to building out a cadence. But and like I say, this is something that you learn kind of on the job, and there's no shame in that, absolutely none at all. As you begin to test different cadences, you may start to notice patterns which you can use in your favor, or vice versa. If you start to see something's not quite working, then you can tweak it. So that would be my answer in terms of revenue. Obviously, if you see a company making lots of money, then that's probably a good sign in terms of buying intent and things like this. So you obviously take these things into account, but when it comes to building out and fleshing out a cadence, I would tend to start with a solid template and then build on that when it comes to seeing absolutely what actually works.
Yeah, absolutely. We recommend the same. The reason I brought up the revenue, it's sort of like, if this is going to be a big deal, then obviously the time that you put in is going to be a little bit more than, say, like the lighter deals that you can probably automate a little bit more. It could be, you don't need quite as many personal touch points, although we always recommend personal touch points, of course. But, you could see, so if it's going to be a big fish, then definitely you can spend the time, do the research, treat it more.
We talk about like the low-hanging fruit as well. Like you can, that tends to be to spend, as you say. I agree. You spend as much personal time as you can on personalizing as many emails and calls as you can. But like you say, that forms part of that same idea. That you could probably make your life a little bit easier and free up some more time for a bigger deal if you're dealing with some smaller revenue companies. Yeah, completely get that.
Absolutely. You touched upon spreading it out a little bit, so it's not like you're hammering them in 11 days. So let's break that down a little bit. What does that look like?
So I always like to start with an email. I think again, I don't know how that aligns with your guys, but for me, starting with an email or a LinkedIn touch point allows me that, the next day or the day after when I get on the phone, I have even if this is the smallest of excuses to speak to that person, or reason to speak to that person. Hey, I sent you an email yesterday. Did you get a chance to see it? It gives you, and not only does it give you a reason to speak to them, beyond that of the, the reasons you are actually speaking to them. It also, I find, at least in my SDR team and the SDRs I've worked with, it also helps you kind of on a like a mental level as an SDR say, actually, no, I do have a reason to speak to this person. I have a way in, I have a way to start this conversation. So on like a kind of mindset kind of thing as well as an SDR, if you have that, hey, I sent you an email yesterday, that helps a lot of SDRs get into the conversation, because there is always, and I completely understand it. I had the same kind of SDR kind of, not fear, but you get slightly nervous. I think everyone experiences that. And if you have an easy segue into a conversation, then that's really helpful. So I always like to start with either an email or a LinkedIn or both on the same day. Then I'll do a couple of days of calling, I think, 1 or 2 days of trying to get on the phone with them, speak to them. And if nothing comes of that, I'll probably bring in my second email there. No, so hey, I was trying to give you a couple of calls and try and maybe capture something over that email. And then I would take a break. I would take a couple of days break there and let them kind of, gather their thoughts, I guess, maybe process. Maybe they're on holiday. Maybe they haven't seen my emails. Maybe they're a very busy week. We all have busy weeks. And so just, cool off a little bit. You don't want to alienate someone or burn the market by pushing too hard too early. At the end of the day, in lots of these cases, I would say, the old cliche, it's a marathon, not a sprint. You'd be surprised how many meetings, I guess, you can close even on a breakup email now. And coming to the breakup email, I think after a couple of days of break, maybe I try a couple more on the phone. Maybe I send another email, but I would definitely finish my entire sequence with a short, snappy, almost kind of funny breakup email and a phone call and a LinkedIn message all on the same day. Finish with everything, go all out, try and get that meeting. And like I say, you'd be surprised how many meetings come from that last attempt. When you've given up all of this hope, you've given a couple of days off and you go for it again, and then suddenly they've either come back from holiday now, or they've decided, it's quite a funny little email, I'm going to respond to that. So for me, I would say, so I would always start with an email. Then I maybe do a couple of days calling, probably finish those couple of days calling with another email, take a small break, a couple more attempts on the phone, and then at the end of let's say a nearly 2-week period, I would probably send over a breakup email and also one last dial just to make sure.
Right. I mean, because let's face it, the importance of multi-channel is pretty obvious, I would think, right? Because we just don't know what your target's preferred method of communication is. So some might absolutely avoid the phone like the plague. Others are, super active on LinkedIn. So that's the best way. I know I've had great success connecting with people on LinkedIn that you would never be able to connect via phone or email, because they're just, they're too sought after, too well known, too popular. They're being hammered every day by a million of us, right? But yet they're active and willing to have a conversation on LinkedIn. So figuring
out the approach is different as well when it comes to, on the phone, you're gonna approach it in a certain way, which one individual might respond to. In the email, in an email, again, you're going to approach it in a different way. I always find LinkedIn as well is much more informal. Now you end up having these slightly more informal conversations. You can be a little bit more again, person to person. I recommend that in all of my, the channels, but
for sure,
not just, who responds to what, but also, different ways of selling. At the end of the day, it's a completely different conversation you have with someone on LinkedIn as opposed to someone on email. And you could be speaking to the same person on LinkedIn and an email, and the conversations look completely different, like two different people now. But really, really important. The whole conversation that we've been having just now, we've been saying phones, emails, LinkedIn. That highlights immediately the importance of being multi-channel. Now, I absolutely 100% get, and also, there's other ways as well. I like to throw in my cadences or my sequences Potentially, again, if the lead's a really good lead, if it's one of those high revenue ones, and maybe throw in, this may be a little bit cliche, and I'm sure there's some people out there who don't necessarily agree with me on this, but a handwritten letter or something like that. Now, I know it's like been said.
Oh, you're going old school. It's amazing.
I would not recommend doing it to every lead. Absolutely no chance. But if there's someone you really want to get in touch with, more than anything, I don't think you'll get a handwritten response. That's for sure. But I do think you might get, at least what happened to me, for example, in my team, is if we send a handwritten letter, then people look at your emails a bit more, and you can see them opening your emails. You can see them kind of interacting with you guys a little bit more, on your website or whatever. So it definitely, calls attention to what you're trying to say now. So yeah, multi-channel, and you can be really creative with this kind of thing as well, which is obviously really important when it comes to sales development.
I love that. I haven't heard of that in quite a long time. And why wouldn't you? I mean, the whole point is, like you say, to stand out, right? To stand out amongst the millions of views that are calling, and top of mind recognition. Who is this person? Who is this person? Right. So yeah, I think that's pretty great. I think we have a question, Sebastian. So let's take a look. Which I'm going to need glasses to read. Okay, you indicated you know your prospect better. So what type of research would you recommend to be done on that big fish prior to reaching out?
So yeah, like I say, I mean, for me, that knowing your prospect better than they know their own company is the start. So when I say that, what do I mean by that? What do I mean by the research? I'm speaking from experience here, but when I call someone or when I'm emailing someone, I want to know who their boss is, who the decision makers are. I want to know when they last raised some money. I want to know what tech stack they're currently using, because how is my tech stack going to fit in, we're all selling software here, no? So how is my, or whatever you're selling, and how is my product going to fit into their current setup. So I want to know what they're using. I want to know who they report to, like who am I speaking to, who's in their team. And also by doing so, you come across not only as an expert, which is obviously really, really helpful when it comes to sales development. If you can provide that initial value, coming across as someone who really knows what they're talking about. But then secondly, you can also demonstrate that the email you're writing, or the phone call you're making, or the LinkedIn message you're writing was written or designed specifically with that person in mind. If I can say, hey, look, I know, hey, I saw, your two team members, for example, I don't know, you can name drop those team members. And by doing so, you're demonstrating a clear investigation and personalization. So not only do you know their team, you're also telling that person, this is for me and not for anyone else. No?
Right.
And so there's loads of other little things you can do. I mean, I always check to see if I have anything in common with that individual. Now, maybe we went to the same university. Maybe we went to, maybe we're from the same part of the country. Maybe I always like to bring in football, soccer into the whole thing. If I see that they support the same team, or we have like a rivalry, things like that. And you'd be surprised how much you can find out with LinkedIn. There's so many little things you can find in there. Previous experiences, likes, interests, all of that's on LinkedIn. If I see that they speak language, for example, Spanish, I don't know, I would maybe, put a line in there in Spanish or something like that. So
Sure.
to just really make sure that person feels like, hey, look, this is for me, and this person knows what they're talking about. So that's what I mean when I say researching them. And I think that bears true in all the sequences and cadences that we write now. I mean, a lot of my sequences and cadences that I write for my SDRs have a big gap in the email saying, put some research in here, find out, what tech stack they're using, or find out what CRM they're using, so you can use that. You can tell this person you've done that research. So for me, that's a really, really important part of the SDR role. And it's something that I really hammer home, especially in the early weeks in onboarding SDRs, is, hey, look, guys, this is how you research companies, and this is how you can come across as the expert that you are.
Absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's been proven and tested time and time again that it's that personalization that is key. And again, we're just trying to have a conversation here. Like SDRs, you're not trying to sell, you're not trying to pitch. It's literally just let's have a conversation, let's get in the door, right? And there's no better way to do that than to be human and, like you say, be personal and never forget that piece of it, especially when we're talking channels like LinkedIn. Like you're not trying to sell on LinkedIn. Like it's definitely just a connection and to have a conversation, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Look at this, we have another question. I love this. Okay, so on the same manner, do you feel, or how do you find out that information? For example, with Bloobirds, like how do you find out what other software they're using or not using?
Like I say, LinkedIn is a very, very powerful tool for this kind of thing. You can learn lots and lots about companies based on LinkedIn. Even, for example, if you just go to, I don't know, if you go to like the Bloobirds company page on LinkedIn, you can search for words within the people at Bloobirds. So I could search, HubSpot CRM, for example, in Bloobirds, and everyone who's put HubSpot CRM who works for Bloobirds will show up. So everyone who's got HubSpot CRM in their bio will show up who works for Bloobirds. But like I say, LinkedIn is super powerful. There's also lots of tools out there, like who can help you with tech stacks and things like that. I also use G2 quite a lot. In order to find out, competitors of companies. You can also find out people's tech stacks using G2. So there's lots and lots of tools out there. I'm sure that we can put something out, and we may even have some content on this at Bloobirds anyway. So maybe we can set that out or something like this after the call. But there's plenty of tools out there. But I would say LinkedIn is your number one friend, and Sales Navigator as well. I mean, you can't go wrong with Sales Navigator really. So yeah, that would be my answer to that question. And yeah, there's plenty of ways to find that information out.
Awesome. Thanks for that. So we have a few minutes left. So let's get into the actual meat and potatoes of the emails themselves. So some quick tips and tricks, first email, second email, third email, what's best practices there?
Sure. Okay. Yeah. So I mentioned that I would, in let's say an 11-day, multi-channel cadence, I would probably include 3 to 4 emails in there. Again, I mean, after 3 or 4 emails, if someone's not replying, they're probably not going to reply at any point. Obviously, again, if it's a bigger company, as we've already mentioned, you can work harder on that, and you can maybe do a few more emails in there. But I would definitely say in your first email, and Christine, you may have your own tips and tricks here as well. But I would definitely say in my first email, I'm short and snappy. I'm focused on them. I'm not focused on us. I'm not going to try and give all the features that my platform does and all this kind of stuff. And, no one really wants to read that. Now, at the end of the day, when someone sends me an email and starts telling me about all the cool stuff their software does, I kind of lose interest in it. Now, I want to know how that software is going to help me as in my position. How is it going to make my life easier? How is it going to help create my improve my results, whatever, make my life easier, make my SDRs more efficient, all this kind of stuff. So I want to hear about me. I want to, everyone's kind of wants to hear about themselves. No, so that's definitely like my number one email. And also I think you don't want to be too long in this email. Again, it's the first email. You want to give them a quick, short snap. Hey, look, I can make your life better and easier, and this is how, this is why. Come and check it out. Now, at the end of the day, SDRs are not selling the product; they are selling curiosity. And if you can inspire or create a little bit of curiosity in that prospect with that first email, then you've done your job. I also always like to, throw in a zero, no, again, make sure they know there's no commitment on their part. It's all, no strings attached, as we say, it's completely, they can come and check it out. They don't have to, maybe they learn something, maybe they don't, it's quite a relaxed kind of thing. At the end of the day, you're not selling the product, are you? I then like to back that up. If people haven't, replied to that first email, I'd like to back that up with something a little bit more visual. And when I say visual, I don't mean something like a video. I think maybe on LinkedIn video is probably a better shout. But when I say visual, I mean maybe a little GIF or something like that. Something which demonstrates how. So you've just told them in your first email, I'm going to make your life easier. And maybe you could show them a little GIF on how their life could be easier. Maybe a mundane task they have to do every day without using your solution, solved in like a literally 3-4 second GIF. I don't know, something where they can say, oh, actually, this makes sense. No, again, I'm not going to put a lot of text in there because no one really wants to, especially if it's a second email. No, so I think that's important. Maybe give them some value there, no, and also I would also include content where possible. Now I wouldn't include lots of URLs and things like this, because this is the kind of thing which ends up in people's spam folders. But
especially today, it's the spam filters have gotten just more and more intense, right? So good domain health becomes quite the issue for an SDR.
Yeah, exactly. So you've got to be prudent and I don't know, you don't want to overdo that, but I do think you can provide some kind of value, whether it be through content, whether it be something visual there. And we've mentioned the breakup email a couple of times already. I would definitely finish a sequence with a breakup email. Also because it's a bit of fun. It's at the end of the day, the chances are 11, 12 days into a sequence or a month into a sequence, people who haven't got back to you, it's unlikely that they get back to you, if we're honest. But there is still a chance. No, there's still a chance, and
always a chance.
I've seen some great breakup emails out there, but I mean, I always title mine, it's not you, it's me, this kind of thing, So just tell them, hey, look, I've tried to get in touch with you, I failed, whether it be my fault or yours. We'll leave that open to interpretation, but look, that's it. I'm going to stop contacting you, but here is who I am, and this is where you can find me if you need to know. I think the best one I ever saw was a colleague of mine who titled it, subject line was, "Are you an ostrich?" And the first line was, "Why is your head in the sand?" Something like this.
That's great.
He opened the email. Actually, he booked more than one meeting with that breakup email. So fair play to that. That's a good chat, but you can be quite creative with this now, and that's always a fun part of being an SDR as well, as you can mess around a little bit with this kind of thing, especially when it comes to like the fourth, fifth email in the sequence, where really you've got to do something to stand out. We've been speaking about this all this half an hour now. You've got to stand out to those people now. So for me, those are the three biggest important emails. Maybe I'd throw another one in there just before the breakup email to just to follow up on it. Hey guys, look, I'm sending you emails. I would appreciate a response. I mean, I wouldn't say it in those words, but that's what you're thinking when you're writing these emails now. So
absolutely.
I would say more or less. I'm sure, Christina, you can add to that in terms of little tips, I think, for people to actually take on board when it comes to the sequences.
Yeah, no, I think you've touched on all the main points. I mean, the first email, you're focusing on their pain, right? So you're being customer centric. Absolutely. It's what is important to them. And that's, I always think in terms of what's going to get them promoted, what's going to get them fired, like what is important to them. That's what you speak about. You're not even talking about you yet. You're not even talking about your solutions yet. It's just like what we have found that other companies are having problem XYZ. Are you suffering from the same issues? Would you like to have a conversation about that, right? So it's just, like you say, curiosity, a little bit vague, very customer centric. The second email, we call the bumper email. So it's the quick email, probably a one-liner, referring back to the first email, of course, and the pain with possible solutions. The third email, we can be a little bit more in depth with what those solutions are, still, again, customer focused. And yeah, the breakup email, where you can have some fun with it, because why not, right? And more often than not, those breakup emails are what gets their attention, because you made them laugh, it was thought-provoking, whatever it is. But I think the key to remember in every single time you are making a touch point with a potential client is that you need to provide value, right? So you're not just sending an email going, hey, thought I'd follow up on my first email, like what, right? Like that's just not interesting at all. But finding out what's going on in their business. This is where your research comes in that you mentioned, Sebastian, right? So finding out what's going on. Are there world events that are related to their business? Is there something there that is just like, oh, I saw this that you might have found interesting. Maybe it's an article. Maybe it's another touch point on LinkedIn. Maybe they commented on someone's post on LinkedIn and you can then refer back, right? So there's no shortage of opportunities to hit home with these people, and that still doesn't have to take a lot of time. Like, I know this sounds like it'd be a lot of work for an SDR. It really, really doesn't. Like, once you get good at it, a couple of minutes, just a little bit of research here and there, and you're good to go. So, it still allows for scalability and being able to send out mass emails and things like that, but just like little tweaks that make all the difference in the world. Okay, so we're almost there, I believe. So any last words, Sebastian? Any final pitches that you'd like to make yourself?
No, I mean, I think I've managed to kind of. I think we've covered quite a bit in quite a short time. I think we've been pretty rapid in terms of firing out. You know what a sequences includes. Like I say, I mean, for me, the most important things we've said it time and time again. Now is make it multi-channel, do lots of research, and know those people, and be relevant as well. Be precise. I mean,
Exactly.
when and you mentioned this just now, actually, Christina, that how do we demonstrate that value straight away as well. I'll give you guys an example. If I get a phone call from someone, and I work for Bloobirds, we're 30, 40, 50 people company in Barcelona. If I get a phone call from someone or an email that says, hey, look, we work with Google and Facebook and all these massive companies, I immediately think, well, that's not particularly relevant for me, is it? Because I'm a 40-person company in Barcelona. Google is a 100,000, massive
Exactly.
campus, and so be relevant. No, I think actually, Christine, you may have even mentioned this. Maybe you're working with a competitor of theirs. Maybe or maybe you've spoken to the competitors. These little things where you can come across super relevant and precise are the most important things when it comes to being SDR. Because if someone says to me, "Hey, look, we're working with your competitor," immediately I'm going to think, "Oh, well, I best just double check that I'm not missing out on something here." No, so
Absolutely.
those little pieces of research, and as you say, Christine, as well. It might sound, quite daunting at the start. This could take me, 20 minutes each researching this kind of thing. But once you get the hang of it, it becomes like a habit. You know exactly where to go on LinkedIn to look for little things, and within a short amount of time, you can do all of that research in 2 or 3 minutes themselves. So yeah, I mean, for me, personalization, precision, research, and just being precise when it comes to that outreach.
Perfect. Well, that's awesome. Thank you so much, Sebastian, for coming on with us today. I mean, that was great. I'm sure the people listening got some great tips. If anyone out there has any further questions, please put them in the chat. We'll be happy to answer them. Make sure to click the subscribe button on this page so you can be notified about more live streams like this in the future with other great guests. And of course, if you're looking to create predictable revenue at your organization, we can help you grow your business with tailored expert advice, backed by testing to ensure you establish the best practices for your company as you scale your SDR team. So click the link below to find out more about our coaching and consulting services. So thanks again, Sebastian. Have a wonderful day, and have a wonderful day to everybody else out there.
Thanks.